In the 13th century BCE, Western Anatolia was a turbulent place. Proxy war raged on between the Hittites on one side and Mycenaean Greeks on another. The city of Troy, or Wilusa as it was known to the Hittites, desperately tried to navigate through a very tough, unpredictable, and violent landscape. Following the reigns of Kukuni in late 14 and Alaksandu in early 13th century BCE, we encounter the third recorded historical Trojan ruler. In this episode, we go through the scarcely known reign of King Walmu of Wilusa. Following the fall of Arzawa in about 1300 BCE, the triumphant Hittite Empire sought to establish a network of vassal states in Western Asia Minor. Petty kingdoms such as Mira, Seha, and Hapala were carved out of the former Arzawan realm and put under hegemony of the king of Hatti. Even Wilusa to the north had no choice but to bend the knee to the Hittites, at least nominally. The Alaksandu Treaty of 1280 BCE compelled Troy to send troops to the Hatti in case of war and protect the Hittite interests in the region. In exchange, the Hittites would protect then King Alaksandu and his claims to the Wilusan throne, as well as those of his successors. It would appear that decades later, the time came for the Hatti to make good on their promise. First, the Mycenaean-Hittite proxy wars intensified when infamous Piamaradu rose to prominence and started a rebellion against the Hittites and all of their regional allies. Piamaradu was evidently feared, aggressive, and persistent when it came to anti-Hittite activities. He was enabled by the Achaeans of Mycenaean Greece who provided him with shelter in case of a direct Hittite attack. This allowed Piamaradu to wage constant war throughout the reigns of no less than three Hittite kings, Muwatalli II, Hattusili III, and Tudhaliya IV. By the time of Tudhaliya, it appears that Piamaradu had finally passed away. However, the Hittite power and influence in the region, as well as Mycenae's own power, was slowly fading away. This allowed the Hittite vassal states to grow more and more independent, often directly disobeying or even being in a conflict with their supposed Hittite overlords. By the second half of the century, Wilusa was ruled by a monarch named Walmu. It is unknown whether Walmu was a son, a grandson, or otherwise a successor from Alaksandu's bloodline. We do know that he likely had a friendly attitude towards the Hittites, as it was more than clear that Hatti had no objections seeing Walmu on the Wilusan throne. However, other monarchs saw an opportunity to fill the vacuum by furthering their own power. The kingdom of Mira, for example, which was ruled by Alantali, openly challenged the Hittites, which either resulted in or was a part of a wider conflict taking place in the region. He was finally defeated by the Hittites and replaced as a ruler by his son Tarkasnava. It appears that the Hittites acknowledged Tarkasnava as a sort of a regional hegemon of Western Anatolia, as long as he acknowledged Hittite king Tudhaliya as his overlord. Around this time, presumably as a part of this series of conflicts, the Mycenaeans themselves had abandoned their possessions in mainland Anatolia and withdrew from the city of Miletus. The city was taken by the Carians and remained outside the borders of Mira and the Hittite Empire. How and why this happened is not known, beyond the fact that the king of Hatti and his vassal in Mira determined Mira's border with Miletus. That the Hittites did not capitalize on this development shows the fact that they had to rely on Tarkasnava being the regional overlord instead of exercising a more direct influence themselves. Also, things in Wilusa were not well either. A poorly attested sequence of events, either a rebellion or an external intervention, saw Walmu defeated and fleeing the city of Troy. He fled to Mira, where he was granted refuge by King Tarkasnava. However, Tarkasnava's relations with Walmu and with Tudhaliya, for that matter, are not entirely clear. The Hittite king felt compelled to send a letter to Mira, trying to convince Tarkasnava to abide by his duty as a Hittite vassal. The letter is known as the Milavata letter. Some of its fragments read as follows: I, my majesty, have taken up you, my son, an ordinary man, and you have recognized me as overlord. I gave the land of your father to you, but your father had always desired my border territories. When your father marched against me, then I, my majesty, opened hostilities and defeated your father. But I, my majesty, took you up, my son, and treated you in a brotherly fashion. You recognized my majesty as overlord. I, my majesty, thereby established once more the sea as my frontier. If, my son, the matter of Agapurusia has come up, I, my majesty, have somehow the matter of the fugitive. Is it not right to return a fugitive? We have placed something under the oath of the storm god. But he thus, and furthermore the troops, he went away. Then by night he went down, and when his lord, he fled. Then they took for themselves another lord, but I did not recognize the evil one. Kulanaziti retained possession of the wooden tablets that I made for Walmu, and he has now brought them to you, my son. Examine them. Now, my son, as long as you look after well-being of my majesty, I, my majesty, will put my trust in your goodwill. Turn Walmu over to me, my son, so that I may reinstall him in the kingship in the land of Wilusa. He shall now be the king of the land of Wilusa as he was formerly. He shall now be our military vassal as he was formerly. The Hittite king, presumably Tudhaliya, spent several more paragraphs trying to convince his vassal to abide by the oath. It is clear that Walmu was deposed from Wilusa and that the Hittites did not recognize the new ruler of Troy. They request that Walmu be sent to the Hatti so that they could reinstall him on the Wilusan throne. The letter also shows that Walmu is supposed to be a rather minor ruler, under the influence of the king of Mira, who in turn was a vassal to the Hittites. The Hittite king even sends his envoy, Kulanaziti, with a wooden tablet supposed to prove and validate these requests and show that Walmu should indeed be reinstalled in Wilusa. The mere fact that Tudhaliya had to reportedly remind and insist that Tarkasnava was his vassal and that he should respect his oath shows that the Hittite influence in the region was fading away and that the king of Mira did not necessarily feel compelled to do as the Hittites say. The last paragraph before the text breaks off points how the Hittites have given hostages of the cities of Ultima and Atria to Tarkasnava, while he did not send certain hostages to the Hatti. The last sentence possibly even accuses Tarkasnava of being malicious, although the full meaning is difficult to determine due to the broken text. Whether Walmu was eventually sent to the Hittites or what otherwise happened to him is not known. It does appear that the Hittites continued to lose their grip in western Anatolia. Ultimately, the region would soon be set ablaze once again in a series of events known as the Late Bronze Age Collapse. Special thanks to all the channel patrons, members, and subscribers. This was WanaxTV.